All right. So I'm going to kind of run through what we do in terms of running the financial reports. So let's say it's a estate planning client that decides they want to move forward with financial planning, or if someone wants to just come in on the financial planning side, there's a couple things that I do on the back end, both in terms of setting up kind of after the first meeting, once we get that information, and then once they kind of decide to move forward, different things to run different scenarios. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. So a lot of the stuff, once we get the information, will be saved into their folder. And a lot of the financial information is typically either in funding or CWG, or sometimes it's called financials. Really, what I'm looking for is information with regards to taxes, as well as investments, as well as Social Security information, and then just basic information. And a starting point is always their personal information form. So this just gives you a background of, okay, what's their date of birth? Because some of the different financial programs will need that information, whether they're married or not, whether they have children, their date of birth. This is just kind of rough information, but whether they're having any Social Security, pension, if they have any wages coming in. And then this is just gives us a little bit of background in terms of their assets or investments, their real estate. Big one is, when do they want to retire? Those are all important things in terms of kind of what I'm looking at. So a lot of times I'll start with a personal information form just to get some background information about kind of where they're at. And then from there, once we get the information, let's go to their statements. So each of them will have different account statements. Before I look at the statements, I always look at their funding information, their asset table. So the asset checklist. So this is what they fill out. So this tells me the different accounts that are out there. And I should have an investment statement on each one of these, because again, sometimes clients lie. Like they might put an investment account when it's an IRA, or an IRA versus an investment account. And so this gives me a good idea of just at least big picture from an investment standpoint, how their investments are broken up. Again, this isn't the end all be all, but it gives me an idea. The end all be all is going to be the actual statements. So Social Security statements, that plays an important role as well. So here's like the Jackson National. So this is a statement. This is a fixed annuity. This is the type of thing that we're going to need. So this is an annuity. Those work a little bit different. Here's her Roth IRA. So it says Roth IRA, whose it is. It gives us the account value. And what's really important with these is that it has a breakdown of the investments, the holdings. I need to know what the holdings are, and that's going to be on the statements. So this tells you it's a joint account between Jeff and Diane. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll take a look at all the different statements and then compare that to the asset table just to make sure that we're not missing anything. A lot of times when I have these investment statements, what I'll do is then I will go over to, I'll run an investment report. And I do this through AE, and I go to the AE portal. I go down to case design. And so when I'm doing an investment report, I'll run an AEWM illustration, and then it's going to ask me for the following information. Do we have a spouse? Yes or no? Let's say we do. So we have Jeff, Zafina. We have put in date of birth. A lot of times I'll go back to the personal information form to gather that if we have it. And then we have Diane, Zafina, put in their date of birth. And then this is the important part here, risk and fee analysis. And then we have to upload all of the actual investment statements. So I take all of the investment statements, and again, I'll pull the investment statements, and then I'll double check it based off of their funding checklist to make sure that we're not missing any. So anything that they've listed on the asset checklist should be listed, we should have. So if there's another Vanguard account that I'm missing, I can look here. But once I've uploaded all the statements, you could have like as many as 10 statements, and you could have more accounts than statements. So it could be 15 accounts, total balance, add it all up, and you can rough this number, but it should be relatively accurate. Compare it to a benchmark. I like to just compare it to the S&P 500. And then you have to actually upload the different statements. And then once you've done that, so you browse files, upload the statement, and then once that's done, then you hit submit. And then what happens is within about a day or so, AE will come back with a illustration. And this is what I need to see. I'll show you an example illustration. So they'll do an analysis. So I submitted it. It was in progress. There wasn't any additional details. It's completed. So here you see I submitted all of these statements for the client. And now what they've done is they put together an analysis for me. This really is two things. One, it's a Morningstar report. First, it tells me like how they're invested in terms of how much is in like cash, US stocks, non-US stock bonds up here in the top left, and shows potential returns. But the big thing for our clients in terms of fee analysis, potential range of the portfolio, like this portfolio, theoretically, there's a chance it could lose $600,000 almost. But the big thing here is I'm looking for this expense analysis, because what it does is it gives me this internal expense ratio. Each mutual fund, they have higher expense ratios, and anything greater than about 0.5 is thought of pretty high. So this has an expense ratio of 0.69, which is over 0.5, so it's pretty high. So on his $1.1 million of invested assets, unbeknownst to him, he's paying just over $7,000 a year in additional fees based on this expense ratio, versus a lot of the portfolios that I put together, like the expense ratio is maybe around 0.2. So that's just one area we can add value. Then the other thing is he has a variable annuity, which really isn't one of the best investment options because it has a very high expense ratio. So on his $860,000 variable annuity, he's paying $8,000 a year in fees that he doesn't really see. This isn't like fees going to the advisor or anything. It's just internal fees. So this had an expense ratio about 1%. So right now he's paying a lot in terms of fees. And with that variable annuity, there's two pieces to it. One is the investment cost and the other is the insurance cost. And you add that up. So on this $860,000 investment, he's paying $15,000 a year in fees for that. So that's a big reason why I don't like variable annuities. And then also a big thing that I like to use this for is going down here. They put together a Riskalyze report. So it assigns a risk score, shows the expense ratios, and it shows kind of the range of his overall investment portfolio, and it breaks it up based on investments. So this is something that I use to put together portfolios at the end of the day. So the first thing we need to do is get the statements and do the investment report. Any questions so far?
One thing on the
Sure.
statements, sometimes the statements are scanned in as one document. Is that okay to do it when
Yep.
you drop it in?
Yep, that's perfect. You would say it's like multiple statements, but it could be just one PDF. Like if all of these were like scanned in as one PDF, that's fine. And then AE actually does a pretty good job. Like this one is a overall UBS statement, but I'm sure we actually submitted like a specific UBS statement somewhere in here too. They do a
Okay.
pretty good job of ferreting that out. But I always look to that funding checklist. Even better, if we have a funding table, that should be pretty clear in terms of the different accounts. And you can almost use this as a checklist to make sure I'm not missing any accounts. So that's the investment report. Another thing that I like to do is run a tax report. And this is through a program called Holistaplan. With Holistaplan, log in, go to households, and you'd either add a household if it's a new household, like a new family. And again, you just need first name, last name, put in the date of birth if we have it, and we should have date of birth. So always put in date of birth. And again, I'm referencing the personal information form for this a lot of times. And then what we do is we just upload a tax return and you pick which year the tax return is from. And then you select which household it goes for. And tax returns are going to be typically like it would be called like a Fed or 1040 or something like that. So here's the 1040. Big thing I'm looking for here is the taxable income. What we would do is we would take this and we'd upload it to Holistaplan. And then what it's going to do is then spit out a report. And it gives me two things. One is a tax report that has taken all of that information on the 1040 and given me the key figures of taxable income, marginal rate, average rates, shows me where they fall in terms of tax bracket. And this is what I'm using a lot of times when I'm doing a tax analysis of, okay, last year you had $82,000. We think taxes are going up. We could do a Roth conversion to get you up to 171, or we might want to do a Roth conversion to get you up to 326. And it's just a nice report that I can easily print out for clients to really simplify that 1040. And this is something that I use to help kind of get them to move over in terms of tax planning strategies. This is even useful when we have clients who have done a Castle Trust and we need to talk about IRA exit strategies. So this is like our number one tax planning report. Those two are like our main preliminary ones that really don't take a ton of effort to put in. It's just, all right, we upload the investment statements to AE, they spit back a report, we get a tax return, it spits back a nice report, and then we can have some intelligent conversations and the clients have some nice deliverables that they can walk away with. So both of those, they're pretty easy, pretty straightforward. It's a little more time consuming to make sure that you have all the investment statements, and it's really important that we gather that. The tax report, it's pretty straightforward. You input the name and date of birth of the client if it's not already, and then you just upload a tax return and it should be good to go. Now, this one is time consuming. This is a program, it's called Right Capital. And this is like our main financial planning software. A lot of times, if I have the information ahead of time, like the tax report and the investment statements, like I'll use those sometimes in the first meeting if I already have that information, or I might gather it later. But to work in Right Capital, I really need like all of their information. The things I need when doing a full financial plan are investment statement, all the investment statements, all the bank statements, any life insurance information, Social Security, pension information, information on real estate, and tax returns. With that, then I can put together a full-fledged financial plan. I need to talk to the clients about it too. Inputting a new client, it's pretty straightforward, like first name, last name, put together email address. We could invite clients to input their information. This would be like something maybe instead of doing a personal information form in the future. But right now we just input all the client's information ourselves. Let's say we're inputting me as a financial planning client. So then it's pretty straightforward. And there's some help videos on this as well, but you just input their information. So first name, date of birth, last name, planning horizon, like how long do we think they're going to live for? We input the spouse's name, if there is a spouse, their date of birth, how long they think they're going to live. Then we add in the kids' information. We don't worry about grandkids, but we add in the kids, put in their date of birth. They have multiple kids, put in multiple kids. And then you see the information we need. So just family information, income information, savings, net worth, expenses, goals you may or may not know. But this gets me started. So like what's salary? I make $20,000 a year. When will my income end? At retirement. Started. Let's say Ro makes $300,000 a year. She's the breadwinner. Save. Social Security. This is where we would go back to the client folder, pull up Social Security statements, and then the big one that we're going to need is what is their Social Security at full retirement age? So here, full retirement age is 66 and 4 months. And so for Diane, her full retirement age, Social Security would be 1680. So let's pretend that that's mine. So what we're going to use, we're not going to use a simple estimate. We're going to base it on the Social Security statement value at the time of taking Social Security. That was 1680, save. And then for her, I would do the same thing. Grab her Social Security statement. Let's just say it's the same thing to keep things moving. Again, we'll take based on Social Security and we'll say hers is she makes more than me. And then if there's pension income, like they are getting a pension, not a pension buyout or anything, we put in pension information as well. But a lot of times, one of the conversations we have is whether to take the pension or not. A lot of times we take the lump sum. So now we've inputted all the income sources. And if they have additional income from other sources, we can do that as well. So now we've inputted all the income information. Now, if they're currently saving in to like 401ks or brokerage while they're still working. Let's say I'm contributing 6% and then Rose contributing 6% to her 401k and I'm contributing to a taxable account, let's say $20,000 a year. So we showed income, we've showed that we're creating more savings. Now, a lot of times for a lot of our clients, they're about around retirement age. So they're retired. So they might not have wages. They might not have current savings. So this would only be if people are in an accumulation phase, not a distribution phase. A lot of our clients are at preservation distribution or just about at or within the next couple of months. So the savings part, really, we don't do a ton a lot just because most of our clients are around retirement age or retiring. So now we're into the net worth inputs. And so this is where we're looking at cash, bank, if they have credit card debt, their investments. A lot of our clients don't have stock plans. They do have property. This is like would be mortgages and stuff. The way you do it is we would add an account. And a lot of times what I'm doing is I'm going back to the asset table or looking at the statements. The easiest thing is to find the asset table, assuming it's accurate, and just kind of go line by line through that. So it just lists the different accounts. And so what I'll do is just one by one, add the different accounts in. And so, all right, they have a bank account, joint, DFCU, checking. It's a checking account. The balance based off the asset table showed it was 20,345. Included in plan is an owner. No, it's a joint account. Next account on the asset table, they have a checking account. So it's the DFCU joint checking or joint savings account. This is a savings account. Maybe they have a money market or CD. Balance here, 75,456. It's a joint account. Then they might have a lot of times investment accounts. So this is TD IRA. What type of account is this? Again, we need to make big differentiations between the types of accounts. And there's lots of different types of accounts, but this is a traditional IRA. Is it managed? We're not managing it yet, but we will be. Let's say the total balance is $1 million. The allocation, you can look at it, but just look at the amount of stocks versus bonds. So a growth account would be like 70% stocks, 30% bonds. A conservative account would be like 65% bonds, 35% stocks. And typically the statements will have it. If for whatever we don't know, just put it in as moderate, like a 60-40 portfolio, 60% stocks, 40% bonds. But we should have the information based on the statements. And then in terms of property, typically people own a home and they already have like home built in here. For some reason, they say it's rented, but most people own their home, put in the current value. If we have it, typically we will. Typically we want to have the insurance and like maintenance stuff, so that's fine. How's it owned? Let's say it's owned by the trust, save it. Now, a lot of times when people do have a home, they also have a loan attached to it or mortgage. So we need to make sure that we attach the mortgage. Mortgage, they're probably both on the mortgage. What was the original amount? We won't always have this, but the big thing is we want to know what the current balance is. We want to know like the monthly payments and interest rate, important to have. And then we save it. And then if they have any type of insurance for their whole life, term, etc. And then they might have like a second piece of property. Maybe they have a vacation home or some vacant land. And we just input all of this different information. And then once that's done, that takes us to expenses. Okay, what are their living expenses? And this information, typically, like I'll ask them, but worst case, if we're just doing this off of kind of initially, we might need to just look at their personal information form, which is one of the questions we ask is what is their expenses? And that's going to be listed here. Their monthly expenses, he listed as like 3,135. Like that's super low in my experience. So I'd gussy that up. Most people are like anywhere between 4 to 6 at the very least. And then taxes, fees, you can just leave that typically. And the next thing is goals. Like when do they want to retire? Okay, both at 67. What do we think their expenses are? Typically, I'll say whatever their current expenses are. And again, this is where I can work with them a little bit when I meet with them. And then Right Capital will just guesstimate annual healthcare costs as well as long-term care costs. If they do have any other goals, like it always, if there are kids that list college, no matter how old the kids are, it's kind of silly, but a lot of times I'll take that out unless that really is a goal. But if they do have any other big goals that they listed, that can be inputted here. And then once all of that's done, we would hit complete. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to create this person, but I'll show you what happens when it's all spit out. And this one I've worked on a little bit, but it shows us like based on all that information, like what is their spending plan, what's their net worth, creates a balance sheet, shows tax allocation, current allocation. I can put in any notes, some cool things. This is something I review with them, like a blueprint, just make sure I captured all the assets, make sure everything's titled properly. We can do some things in terms of reviewing the estate plan, like do they have an estate? We can input whether they have a will or not, who the executor is, when it was last updated. We can review beneficiary designations with them, like who's the beneficiary of their different accounts. In terms of retirement planning, we can look at confidence of the plan, like will they run out of money? There's different action items we can utilize, like what's their monthly expenses. We can look at Social Security, how to optimize Social Security. So in this situation, both of them should apply to age 70 and they'll get about $139,000 more. Gives us information with regards to Medicare, cool things that we can do from a tax perspective in terms of looking at paying taxes sooner rather than later, look at different strategies. Should we be looking at what order should we be paying taxes on? Should we do it pro rata versus tax deferred first, followed by taxable versus tax-free? Can compare the different strategies. So it just gives us a lot to work with, and then it creates a nice little dashboard as well. So this one takes a lot of time to put in, but this is probably the most powerful one because I can talk about income planning, investment planning, tax planning, even healthcare planning and long-term care planning, and then legacy planning all in one spot. And then this spits out some pretty powerful reports that I can then print for clients as well. So any questions on that?
You don't run these for every client, right? It's just the financial clients or?
Yeah, just the financial clients. And this is where we're doing like actual financial planning. So it's not clients who just want a one-off like annuity or something like that. This is where we're really putting together the holistic plan. And like ideally this would be all clients at the end of the day, but we have what I would call more transactional clients of an estate planning client, or maybe someone just needs an annuity. But this is the true financial planning where we can play with different scenarios.
What meeting would this be needed for?
Typically, unless it was already a estate planning client where we have all the information and we have a relationship, like the first meeting, all they do is they bring in that personal information form, and I can kind of eyeball based on that, like what some issues and recommendations would be. And then from there, the next step would be for them to provide all the information, the investment plan or all the investment statements, the bank statements, social security statements, tax statements. So ideally, this would be in the second meeting that I'd have all of this done.
So that would be the FP1 or FP2?
So this would be FP2 for all the reports, because really FP1, typically all I have is the personal information form. And then what the client's supposed to do is, okay, kind of likes big picture our process and approach. Then in between FP1 and FP2, they get me the tax returns, the social security statements, the pension statements, et cetera. And then we run the tax report. We run the investment report. We input all the information into Right Capital so that in the FP2, I can start off with, hey, this is all the information you provided. Is there something that we're missing? Because this shows that, hey, we got everything organized for him. Like they even call this blueprint. So this is when we talk about that retirement legacy blueprint, like this is really what it is we're now mapping out like the rest of their retirement and legacy.
So how long does it usually take to run this, get the information back from AE? What I'm trying to do is figure out timing, like
Yeah.
to set up like an automated task. And
Yeah, usually AE, it takes maybe 2 days for them to spit back their report. The tax report, it takes maybe 15 minutes to do, or 10 minutes even. This Right Capital one takes maybe an hour to 2 hours, depending on how organized the information is.
Okay, so if we should plan on having it like a week before so that the information, run the report so that you'd be able to review them a couple days before, et cetera.
Yeah, like ideally we have like all their stuff at least a week before, and then that would give us enough time to send it over to AE, go into Right Capital, input all the information, run the tax report.
Now, do the reports get emailed to you, or do you have to go into each thing and check and see if it's been done?
Yeah, so I'll get an email notice that they've pulled something, like that it's done. But worst case, you can always go into case design requests and then just put in the name, and you can then pull up like what the status of it is. We can get you on the notification list once you're kind of in here.
I think we put her on the notification list, actually. I asked for it to happen.
Another thing is I might ask for like an annuity to be run. You would go in again to case design. So instead of AE wealth illustration, we would do an annuity illustration and input the information for. So I always select new business here. You can even rush it if we need it like tomorrow. Typically it's going to be Michigan. Purpose of the annuity, 95 times out of 100, it's accumulation. Sometimes it might be home healthcare doubler, but really 9 times out of 10, it's accumulation. And then if it's a single person or joint, or single person or married, you just put in whichever it is, put in their names, put in the date of birth. And again, that'll be on the personal information form. Have to put in the gender, spouse's name, date of birth, gender, and then the amount we're depositing, tax qualification. Again, it's so important to understand the difference between qualified and non-qualified. So qualified, let's say it's an IRA, 9 times out of 10, the company we're using is Security Benefit Life Insurance. 9 times out of 10, the product we're using is Strategic Growth Annuity. And then 9 times out of 10, I want half of, this is like the investment portion of the annuity. I want half to go in the S&P with a participation rate, and then the other half to to go into, it's called a 2-year, and then there's never any attachments. But then once you do all that, all you do is hit submit. And then with about a day or so, they'll get me back a fixed index annuity illustration. Ideally, all I want to do is just like send an email to say, hey, I need for Zafina 350 qualified, non-qualified annuity. And then that information would be inputted. Like that takes like 5 minutes. So those are really the big things, is running the tax report, running the right capital report, and running the investment reports, and then getting the fixed index annuity illustrations.
How would I know when you would need that?
I would tell you.
Just telling, okay.
Yeah. Once we get kind of more streamlined, organized, then after every FP1, once that information comes in.
Okay,
So what I'll do is I'll actually set up a task to follow up on that
Okay.
after an FP1. And then obviously Chris will tell you what he wants. And, you know, he may only want one report or he may want all of them,
Right.
depending on what he thinks the client's going to do. So, yeah.
All right. Anything else? Going once,
Nothing.
twice. Thank you.
all right, thanks.
All right. Yep.